big element comes to this, you're like, nothing so exciting yet. But I'll work on this first, because this is going to be the core to our effect. And I have no idea what binged. This is going to be the core to our effect. I'm going to show you how I do this, because what's happening here is very different than what you may have seen in some of the other animations we've done. So let's look over at the code right away, and I need a way to like this, make this smaller or something so you can't see at the same time, but well, let's shrink as much as possible. We just won't do too many indentation levels. That'll be our limit. When the indentation level gets too small, we'll we'll create a new file. So what I've done here is, it's very different. Is there's a stack panel on the top here, and it's a horizontal stack panel. So let's actually make that into a scroll view first to show the idea of how this works. And this is allowed scroll directions equal horizontal. Indent this a bit. And we're going to put another item in here, so the stack panel. And I'm just going to copy and paste this item for now. Obviously, copy and pasting is not so pretty. You shouldn't do this much. But just to show the effect, we'll get it. You can understand the effect first of all. I'm giving it a new name B. I'm going to make this one green. And then I'll explain what those bits are later. We'll put a bit of item spacing. It's 10. And I put the dock, yeah, because I put in the scroll panel, the dock has to go to the top. Okay, and just so this is a scroll panel. It does scroll. It's not so interesting, the scrolling right now, but okay. Second. Excuse me. Must be something peppery around here that I just ate. Okay, so the idea is when you click on this, it zooms from there. Now when I click on the green one, it zooms from that one. Right, now I added these two of this color, and you can see zoom in. If I can make it zoom slower, let's make these a bit bigger. Make these each 100 in size, 100 width and 100 height. You can truly see the effect of what's happening. I'm going to make it go really slow. And this is just for demonstration purposes, that when you click on it, you can clearly see the object coming from it. Now it's coming from behind it, which may not be the best thing first. And there's always two ways to do this in Fuse. You can either manually control the Z index, or you can move this to the top of the file. Usually I don't like moving elements around because it feels wrong. This is at the top, and it's like if you're reading the files, you're going to expect to find it there. So instead I said Z offset down here, offset equals 1, and that should put it to the top. Preview sometimes has some issues. I have an issue that it doesn't necessarily pick that up, but oh, it did pick it up this time. And so now it's on top of that. And so this is using a layout animation, and let me get into how this is actually working first, because this is going to be the core of the transition effect. If we can't get this working and we don't understand what's going on here, we won't be able to do the navigation translation. So let's look at what happens here first. When we click one of these elements, this is this part here, we click it. The first thing we do is we do a set. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you've read the documentation, there's going to be a big warning besides set. Use with care. Are you sure you want set? Usually you want to change, but there are cases where you want to set, and this is one of them. Set from object equals A. Well, what is that? Well, A is the panel at the top. This is the panel here. It's panel B over here in this one. And what is from object? From object is something called a resource object. You may have seen other resources in the code, like if you have something like a float forwards, a color, and you say UX value equals, you want red, and you say UX key equals prime color or something. This creates a resource named prime color. Now, a resource object is also creating a resource in the tree. It's just a dynamic resource. You can actually modify the value of it. Modifying resources can be costly if you do this much. Do not animate their modification, but for single updates it's okay. And so resource object says key from, and this is the value it has in the tree. And we can see this down here on this thing called transition layout, resource from. This is a normal resource binding. It's binding to the resource called from. So when we click this panel, and it says set from object.value, that's how you modify it, equals A, it sets this resource object, and then this transition layout down here will bind to this new from object. Okay, so far so good. Well, what happens next is then it calls raise user event. Now, if you haven't used raise user events, these are ways to dispatch events through your code, cross files and stuff, and they're really helpful. It goes up the tree. And UX, I'm using the event name here. You can also dispatch them from JavaScript. They have events. You bind them that way. I think event equals may work as well, or it might be a newer version, so I'm going to stick with the event name for now. So you can, and if you're in a different source file, you can't use the name anyways, so you can't use the object, so sometimes name is more helpful. Raise user event just goes and triggers an event called appear, and it's this user event here. And this just fires the event. Firing event does nothing on its own. It's down here in this panel where we have an on user event appear. And this appear is triggered by that event. So effectively, when you call clicked on this panel, it's triggering an event. It's firing an action down here. And that action is now called this special transition layout. Okay. This triggers an artificial layout change. You may have seen like layout animations before. Layout animations for when something changes in layout, we have a layout animation that changes it from the one state to the next. What a transition layout does is it fakes it. You give it a from, and you say, pretend we have a layout change from this element to wherever we are now. And this element is going to be the one we clicked up here. And so what we're really doing is when we say on user events, we're telling this element down here, pretend it used to be over here, and do the transition. And that's exactly what it does. So this is the core to it, and this is going to be what's the key point here is that the way we've structured this, obviously if you were just doing just this animation, there's simpler ways to do this, but we've structured this on the assumption that the thing that's creating this event and setting these values is somewhere entirely different than the thing that might be responding to it. We have a bit of trickery here with the resource object we might have to pass down, but we'll get around to that. That is, this can be in a different file. And we'll see that as we do the navigation, we can throw this in a different file. There's no hard binding to anything in this UX file. It's completely based on names and dynamic binding, which is really helpful. So let's put this animation back down, and you can see it a little bit better as what happens. And you can see it's a typical animation. You know, linear easing is probably not what you want. And this is so standalone, and I'm going to give this one a new name, and you can't give these things apps. So I'm going to say this as something else. Just as a reference, if you ever want to come to this example and have a really simple reference of what's going on here, sample anim.ux. And we'll just call this a panel in or something. Just put this in a panel, UX class equals sample anim. I'm just doing this because I'm going to leave it in the same folder, and you can't have two apps in there. It'll get mad at us. Okay, and we're going to create a new main view. Then we'll make the main view do something else. The main view is now going to be this card manager here. And how does this card manager start? With some credit cards. This is the view of the credit cards, and so we're going to do the basics now. We're going to set up the back end for this. And the first thing we do is we set up the project file to allow our model.js files, and we'll modify main view to take a model equals, and I always just call it state, and that should be good enough for now. And it should complain if it reloaded everything. The view should complain at us, right? We might have to regenerate. When you touch the model, when you touch the Uno project, it doesn't necessarily reload it. And we're going to create the whole JavaScript first, though. Export default class state. Let's save this as state.js. And we've been doing work with TypeScript, and I actually highly recommend you use something like TypeScript instead of raw.js. I'm just not using TypeScript here now to keep the example simple so you don't have too much setup work to get something working. But then, of course, it's untyped. So we have a constructor, and we're going to have a type called card. And we will call these credit cards. We don't know what's on the cards, but they can be fairly basic things. And what do they have on his credit cards? The basic things we have on a credit card are, and again, you want to load this from a back end, but I'll just do it some other ways. Type, this dot type, and we'll just say Visa for now. This dot number. And how you format the number, this is going to be a little bit challenging. So what I'm going to do first of all, as a quick way, is I'm just going to format it in JavaScript, and we'll find another way to do it here another time. And this dot cardholder, it's usually a name, and we'll give the guy's name on there. And I'm going to do it in proper script here, Volkov. And that's surprisingly not his name. He didn't use his full name, so let's actually just get his correct name. I don't know how to type that name on my keyboard. Did Dribble seriously put the guy's name as a graphic? This is a design site. They're putting names as graphics. That's like oh, there it is. It's just really weird. She can't. Okay, I'm actually getting pretty tired with Firefox. Firefox has a horrible problem not being able to select stuff. It never likes it. I guess I didn't copy enough, but okay. So everything supports Unicode now, so we might as well use it. The guy's name is Lubos, not Lubos, and or if I'm so probably pronouncing it wrong, but we get the name there. And what else do we have on here? We have a this dot expires. And again, for simplicity now, for this demo, I'm just going to put a actual string here. You'd probably want to have a date. You can use like the Momentum library to format dates, and that works. And you might want to put like a backside to this where you'd have a CVC number as well, because if this is actual card holder for the person, and I'll just add it here just to do, we won't show it quite yet, but if you're actually using such a card holder and you want to replace it in the store, I don't actually know the purpose of these things, but if you had like gym cards and stuff, you're going to have other things here. So you might have different templates. These names might become more generic. They're going to have numbers. But that's enough. We have a number there. And we just create some cards. And we'll just create the same card type. Again, I'm just filling in random data here. I mean, not random data, but the same data, just so we can get started on this thing. And we can add things as you go along, different card types, because obviously we have the Visa and the MasterCard here, and you'd want to add more. I imagine a card thing like holder like this would be more useful for like gym memberships and stuff, but okay, so this gives us enough to actually have cards, and we can modify the main view now. We're going to remove lots of stuff. It has a scroll view, it has a stack panel. Our stack panel is now vertical. Let's just get rid of this other stuff here. And I'm not entirely certain how I'm going to structure this, so it might take a bit of effort here. Each items equals cards. And now we're going to create, because each of these ones, we're going to create something called a card view. And it's going to have some stuff in it, though. Card view. It's going to have this clicked thing here. Now it should complain when we load it, if it's actually gotten so far to load it. Yeah, now it's complaining about card view. So let's create the card view. This will be panel UX class equals card view. And we'll assume this is in the context of a card. And now the challenging thing here is to get the size correct. But what we can do is, because this is going to be centered, we'll leave the center. We're going to say box sizing equals fill aspect. Ratio equals, actually no, aspect. Sorry, aspect. And the aspect is, what is the aspect of a credit card? Well, it's not quite 2 to 1. Maybe 1.5. 1.67. Let's do 1.65 and see what happens. We'll give this one, let's save this as a card view. Rectangle layer equals background, and we're just going to do a standard color right now. These will have to be based on the type, what happens. And we're going to use our, I'd say wonderful, but not wonderful color picker. I say it's not wonderful because the copy never appears to work correctly for us. So I'm going to pick some value here in the middle, roughly. Okay, and if that copy worked, it did for a change. We have this quarter radius then equals. Make nice rounded corners. And remember, make rounded corners whether you consider them nice or not. It's your own choice. But we'll have lots of padding in here. Now, doing this type of layout of a card, if you don't want this thing to be dynamic in size, or you want to have a fixed layout, or these things all have to be in fixed areas, you sometimes could just place elements directly in it and say, how big is this card? But if we're doing an aspect-based thing and it's stretching to the size, we don't actually know how big the card is. So we have to place these things, and you can say, well, the basic layout here is a stack panel. All right, so let's stick a stack panel in here, and it has a margin of 20. And I encourage you to always deconstruct your stuff into things that are expanding, and this whole thing will expand as well. The reason why is because the moment you work with fixed layouts, and I know a lot of the guys on Dribble do this, and a lot of designs have this, is that they don't adapt. Your screens have random sizes. I don't want to say varying sizes. If you look at the market for devices, it's essentially random at this point. Every particular size you can imagine, there could be borders on them, they could have little UI elements on them in different heights, people have them hold it different ways, they have all these different things, different fonts. Anything that involves a fixed positioning is probably wrong and it will not work on somebody's device. So I encourage you to always deconstruct into layouts, into like constraint-based layouts as some of the tools call it. And that'll give you a much better performance across devices. You'll never get the exact screen you have in the mock-up, but that's to be expected. Okay, so the first row we have here. Now you can position some things off. We'll do this element here. We'll put it relative, but that's okay. For now, let's just say this. We'll say text value equals type. This is obviously wrong. You might have a name instead. Let's give them names, what these cards are. And font size was 32. Text color, or just color. It's white. And I'll just add all the values in. A value equals number. Font size 20, color equals. And now we have a kind of grid at the bottom. We might as well set that up. We have a grid and it has a column count. Well, that's correctly. We're not going to do a column count. We're going to say columns. And the left one looks to be about twice the size. We're going to give it a weight of 2, so it's a 2-to-1 weighting. And the default rows, or we'll just say it has 2 rows. Then we just specifically say the rows are auto and auto to give them the size. And then the text value equals card holder. We'll just do it this way. And there's a smaller font size, probably like a 16 or something. Still white. And then the actual values, text value equals card holder. Now, his font has it smaller than the numbers. I don't know if that's intentional. Maybe it is. So this would be like 18, I guess. We'll have to see relatively. 18 starts looking too small. So I'm guessing this size up here is more like 26 or something. This would be 22. There's a lot of font sizes on here. I don't actually know what my cards look like, but I don't recall them having that many different font sizes. But we'll see how it looks and modify from there. And what do we call this? We can add the name at the same time. We'll say name. And this is just basically Visa, this one. It doesn't have an actual bank name. Usually they have bank names, like, you know, Bank of something, Visa. And, I forgot to look up what we called expiry. Expires. Probably expiration date or something would be better. Font size for 22. Color equals FFF. Now that should be enough to actually see something on the screen. Have we done this correctly? I know it's whining at me. I think we've confused it with the renaming and stuff, so let's just restart the viewport first. We might have to rebuild too, because again, we didn't do the card project thing. Clear this off. Alright, so now it's confused because our main view is something entirely different. So we're just going to rebuild this, so I think somehow I got it confused. Well, I just did a rebuild. What did we do wrong? Sample item is the name is error A declared in sample item cannot be accessed from main view. Oh, I see what it's doing. I forgot to get rid of the set. So this is really going to be card views. This will be, let's just give it a name. UX template equals card. I don't get a name card. Alright. I forgot to put my Mac on the floor. Let me do that. I hope I don't lose the connection. Some of the cables sometimes get iffy. There we go. Noise. Now it's completed, and we don't have anything though. Okay, so what did I do wrong? The scroll view at the top is probably not correct. This is not supposed to be docked. Not supposed to have an item sizing or anything. There we go. Alright, so now we have these cards, and they don't expand to fill the size. Now you're saying, well, how can I make this expand to fill the size? This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. Instead of using a stack panel, we could actually use a grid here with a column count, which say columns equals 1 star, so they fill it up entirely, and the default row, depending on how you want to lay this out, probably not want to lay it out this way. There's 3 rows here, which say 1 star, give them all the same weight. Margin equals 20 still. And it's missing the grid at the bottom. So grids expand to fill the space, whereas stack panels have their own space entirely. They don't like sharing. So that actually works. In the main view, there's like, well, the stack panel here is probably not that good, so let's do a margin of 20 on that. It needs to have some space. So these almost look like cards. They don't look the same as his cards right now, but they should be good enough for now. And they do expand to fill the space, which is good. We have our resizing issues if you resize too much, but that means if you go down. Now the text gets too small, but you can kind of rely, get the smallest device to make sure the text works. You can also make varying font sizes if you want, and this is scroll view. So it fits up a bit. If the person's, obviously if you have a tablet, you're going to have a different layout here as well, and you should make a responsive layout, but at least we have basic adaptiveness so it fits on here. Let's move that down a little bit there. And he has a black background. Some people like black. Okay. We'll put this on the app itself. I may have screwed that up. I didn't take my clear color, which is weird. Maybe because I didn't have it before. So, I always try to restart that. Again, we still have the things. We're going through a lot of the things in preview and making sure they all update live. A lot of stuff does. There's a few things, holdouts there. And if you have any questions during the show, feel free to ask. And I have no idea why clear color is not working. Was it just color now? We may have simplified that. I come from a long time ago. Let's just put it in the main object here instead. Color. There we go. I'll just do it that way instead. I mean, it's not actually black, is it? It's black on one side, not quite black on the other side. We could do linear gradients. Why don't we do a linear gradient? It's sometimes fun to just add them. So we have a color, then we could do a rectangle. A linear gradient. We have to put start point. So comma 0 endpoint equals 1 comma 0. And of course we don't have a color, so we have a gradient stop. You could do this in the tool itself, I believe. I don't do it very often though. So it goes from black, and this is at 0, at stop. So many names for similar things. And let's just make it go to white for a second. Whoops. I just want to see it do it in the tool. Not at offset. Which is really sad I don't remember this, because actually last week I was fixing linear gradient bugs in preview. Okay, and this is obviously it's on top so you can't see it, so we'll throw this in the background. Now I did it all black because I want to see something if we do like go into non-compact mode. We have this rectangle here, and it has a linear gradient. And where do we have this thing? It's attributes. Now I thought we could do the colors in here. I thought we had an editor. We may not have an editor for it yet. We don't have a custom editor for linear gradients yet, so you're just going to edit Swiss, so it doesn't help us to go in here. Sorry about that. I thought we did. I saw something with colors somewhere. It may have been for transitions or animations. Okay, so what colors do we have? His black isn't actually black, and this may be a GIF phenomena, but we're going to do it anyways. And that black is... So this is actually a horizontal diagonal gradient, it looks like, somewhat, almost somewhat. So the endpoint is 1, 0.8 or something, judging roughly. And the endpoint here becoming... Oh, I love GIF. Just pick a color at random that looks like it might represent that color. Actually, we can increase the aperture size, can't we? Does it give average color? I hope it gives average color. Close enough. Build for GIF. So offset equals 1. Okay, now we have a slight gradient, and it looks like this is more like 0.5 or something. It's not quite the same color. You don't have that nice same speckling you get in a GIF. You know, we should really have like a GIF effect in our program that gives you that cheap paletting effect, because it sometimes adds texture. It's also, he also is on this background here, which is kind of cheating. That's okay. We have, it's not pure black. It has a slight offset here. It's a slight blue of some kind. Had to do some variation. The cards, his cards are further apart, so let's put that bigger apart. Stack panel item spacing equals 20. There we go, they're further apart. Okay. And they also have backgrounds and stuff on them. I'm not going to look for a graphic right now. But you can actually tell when you have... It's one of the nice advantages of a gradient. You see a perceived color difference here, and this is just the way the eyes work. And one of our programmers actually posted an article, I read this nicely about that, is that these color changes here, because we see color sharpness, the sharpness changes, so you can actually see it looks like brighter here, but it's really not. And of course, having it over here, there's actually a shadow from this thing. I don't know how to turn this off in Max, and knows how. It's really annoying for doing graphics when you have a shadow from the toolbar on your stuff. I don't know why they did that. Okay. But moving on, we have these basic cards. So now you want to say, well, we want to create some sort of navigation. Because if you click on a card, actually not click on it, we want to put a little menu up there. And what menu do we want to put? And we can put this now overlaid here on the panel. We're just going to say, and what do we want to put? We want to put a little menu thing. Let me just put a little circle for now. You can put the dots later. The ... I actually don't find looks good on this display. I don't think it looks good, so maybe we could just do a flap or something in the corner. And let's just do something in the corner. We're going to put another rectangle over there. And actually I want more of a circle, but equals C. Rectangle alignment equals top right. And this is also going to be layer equals background, as odd as that may seem. No, we didn't put a padding on, so it'll be fine. Layer equals overlay. Overlay is also like a z-index, but it ensures overlay means it's on top of all the normal content. Regardless of z-index layer, it has its own z-indexing layer. Corner radius equals, what I have is, well, let's see what this looks like. Let's try this 2, comma, and then we have to match the 20. Then we have another 2, and then we give it a 5, and the color is going to be, I need a color tool. I added lighten colors. You can actually use lighten stuff now. You can use stuff like lighten and then use release. I don't think it made it out though. No, it's not out yet, so we can't use lighten and darken yet. So I'm just going to have to do something like this. Well, I can do it horribly. I can just do it like this. I just want to have a brighter region. I can just put it that way. And then inside of this, we're going to put some text. Value equals, I don't know, let's put a question mark or something. An icon would make sense there. And it doesn't. Now, it didn't get the size right, and so the corner radius isn't good enough. So we're going to have to do a bit more here. We're going to say the color is black, maybe, I don't know. Font size equals 24. We can already see that showing there. And it has to be at least big enough to fit in the size. So we can say min width equals 20 plus 5, but probably 30 has to be the minimum width. Now there's something odd with my corner radius that it didn't line up. These are both supposed to be 20 corner radius. Something funny here. Should have been the same size. Unless it's just some weird optical illusion, but I don't think so. It's supposed to be the same size, but there's clearly a little part there. Huh. Oh, I know why. Yeah, you have to watch this. Min width actually has to be 40, and the min height has to be 40 as well. And this is where it gets really weird, and maybe we should fix this. The reason is because corner radius can only be half of the size of the thing. The corner cannot extend beyond half. We could, in theory, make it do that, but that gets really weird, and so the corner radius has to be half. But again, you're probably going to be using a graphic for this anyways, so... Why didn't it align that centered? Come on. Does it not like me? Oh, yeah. Because we should put this min width on the rectangle, not in here. Because that's making the size of the text, so it obviously already is centered. There we go. So we have a little question there. I don't know what we want to... And we've lined it up so you have that opening there. And we want to make it when you click this that you go to a different page. And we're going to set up the same basic navigation as we did in other examples. We're going to have to put a navigator in here somewhere. Navigator, pages equals pages. We'll stick the pages on here. And we're going to get rid of all the default transitions. None again. Okay, and there's something else we might have to set in there as well. And how do I want to do this? This is going to have to go on a page on its own. Page UX template equals listing. Now let's get that working first. It's going to complain to us for a second here because we don't have pages. So let's set those up here. And page listing, we'll put this here. Now logically these cards are part of the listing, not part of the main state. Oops. Did it twice in a row. And the main state now has pages, and this is going to be new page listing. It only has one page so far. And we're probably going to have something called go to card. And we can set that up right now as well. Go to card, all of that's, yeah, that's probably fine. And it's going to have to say which card, but we can just assume it takes the data from the arguments. We'll assume it's clicked on a card, in which case this dot pages Push args.data will be this card up here, we assume. Now it'll have to be a card view, but that's okay. We can change that later if we want. So this is enough to page listing, page listing. Okay, why is it not working now? Main view, pages, listing. Oh, we should have to put the path. I want to give this a path of listing. And now it has an error I can look at. $path. Yeah, okay, this $path, of course. There we go. So now we have it back, and now it looks exactly the same, except we're inside a navigator. We could actually go to a different card view. And that'll happen when you click click in this event. I'm going to leave this set here, but we're going to take off the user event for now. We know we can get back to this, but we have this resource object, and we have this set, and we're also going to do a callback, handler equals go to card. And it's probably going to whine at us that it doesn't have card defined, so we need a page doing the card view. Card view. And inside of this we'll have something called card view. You can create your individual pages derived from page, and I'm not entirely decided, but I'm leaning towards the page structure itself should come within the navigator, and so you always have page with a subchild. This is more flexible for testing and working with stuff, and unless you add extra things here, it's not entirely necessary. You can make your card a card page itself. And this would be so the card page will create this. The card page itself, I'm just going to make a panel, but you could actually make this a page class as well. I keep switching back and forth. I'm undecided. It sometimes depends on the project. Now, what do we see was on this page? We have a card view, and we're going to put it at the top. Alignment equals top. And the card view, it needs to have a card, but that's already the context. The context is a card. So card page.ux. And is it whining about something? That should be fine. And take off the default transition for a second so you can actually see what's happening here. And again, the problem with navigation, when you start playing with navigation, you get something wrong. If you not navigate to card, then you have nothing there to go back to. Now I'm actually going to do something here. I'm going to do this new page card with the card data, just to clearly separate our data out from the actual view interface page card. And it will take the data here, and so this .card will equal, actually we should probably call it card. And what we do on the card page then is we're going to say instance item equals card, and then create this card view. Since it's already an instance, we can also just do with data equals card. That'll be the same thing. We don't need a dynamic here. Alright. Now, if we clicked on stuff, what's it complaining about? Cannot navigate to card page, page not found. Card page is there, main view, card page, card view. Again, the whole reason I created this was to create the path to it. Card view. Alright, and so this is not the transition we want, obviously. We want the transition that goes from wherever it was. And I don't have a back on here again. Make it back, or you can use the hardware back button. Go back. Come on, go back. You know you want to go back. So I screwed up to go back somehow. Oh, B. Maybe I'm pressing the wrong key. Well, this is weird. It's not going back on me. I don't know why. So you're going to have to restart the viewport in these cases. You can probably just modify the main file as well. We did a push, so it should have gone back. It might be because I reloaded something, I got confused. Well, it's weird. Go back is somehow not working now. Oh, I know why. Default back behavior. If you want default back behavior, you need to add a router to it. And now we should go back. And this is a curious piece of technology. Notice we added the router after we created the card stack, and it didn't care. It just picked up the pages that were there, and it understands it. And this was actually a major rework done last fall, and I did this. It was a real pain to do. The router doesn't maintain any history. The router is literally just a behavior class, and it uses the structure of your code in these pages, and it knows how to deal with this, and it takes it from there. So if you modify the complete layout of your pages in your JavaScript code, those objects, router doesn't care. It'll still know how to go back. It can still push things. It can still give you your current path. It can tell you what's in the history based on a standard definition of history. Okay, so now we have this set up here. But we obviously don't want this translation. But if you're trying to get an app quickly, I definitely recommend just get the code and structure and stuff working before you start the animations, because if you have a deadline, obviously this transition is better than no transition. I mean, and it works, and you can work on this right now without it. So how do we do this? We're going to do, this is where we get rid of the transition. Transition equals none. But then you'll see what happens here when we do this. Then we click on this. Hello, reload. It should have reloaded. Yeah, this is a big case. This is one of these difficult things for preview to handle. Transition has to be set before the pages are created. It's not one of those ones you're going to have to alter after the fact. We have these things on a list of things to improve, but they're really, really costly in terms of development time to implement all of them. So there are a few things you just have to restart for, and you have to reload. But see, this is no fun now when we have this. It's not so good. And it goes in the background, obviously, just because it's in the background. But we can put this at least here, z_os equals 1. And how did the other thing work? It said, well, it's while inactive. While inactive? I don't know, what did the thing do when it was inactive? Well, it blurred out and disappeared, which is going to be... we'll ignore the blurring for now. It is possible, but we'll just ignore it for now. Change listing dot opacity equals 0, duration equals 0.5. And because I change it, I highly recommend putting your default in, because the default, opacity is a default of 1, but several controls, a lot of properties have a default of default, meaning to use in some intelligent behavior. And if you start animating that, it may do the wrong thing. So if you are expecting to animate from 1 or 0 specific value, use that one instead of the default. Okay, and so now we go back. Okay, but you can see this one's still there, and going back and stuff is kind of an issue. The pages stick around, and this is an issue of what Navigator does. Is go back actually keeps it in the stack. And so while inactive here, you probably just want to hide this. Because going back is very different than replacing the card stack with like nothing. So if you replace this pages with a new page listing, that's very different than just going back, because going back moves you up in the stack, and it doesn't actually remove it because it allows you to go forward then as well, I think. Or the Navigator also keeps things in memory, so just be aware of that while doing custom transitions. Okay, so we have that, and it goes away. They have that, and it goes away. Super exciting, yeah? Okay, so now we're still setting this object the card from it. We don't have to use a user event now because we have a new user event. We give this one a name. We say card. And I'm going to say when it's activated. We're going to do this transition layout effect. I'm going to say from equals resource, what do we call it? From. And I think it's a property was called, not in the pull requests. You don't have to be on the object you're doing. You can actually control it from another object. Transition layout. I just wrote the name of it. from target. Target as often is target equals card. Target means which object are you working on. How will this work? We'll find out. No, it will not. Why not, though? Let's restart this just to make sure. Oh. Yeah. No, wait. It's a bit weird. My activated isn't working. Oh, that's correct, because there is no activated event. Sorry, I'm thinking of like a page control. Page control can activate it. What event do I have to trigger here? That should have worked, actually. This honestly, it should have worked. I'll just try to see something here. Scale target equals card. Factor equals 0.1. Duration equals 1. Maybe Navigator doesn't support activated. I forget. There's nothing name card, of course. So activated is there. We may have an issue that the transition layout. All right, what do I have? From object, from object. I'm going to check something. A delay of 1 or 6. This works. Again, I said I might have problems here because we're trying something. So we don't get an error with transition layout from. With data should be fine. Okay, so what's wrong with card view then? Card view. Well, card view doesn't have a layout animation. That might be an issue. Card view will need a layout animation. So it's deodorant's all screwed up right now. Let's go back to the card page. Just get rid of the scale and let's get rid of the delay and see what happens. And what does it get upset with now? All right, let's just go back. There we go. That's what we wanted. We'll worry about the back transition later. Back transition might be an issue, but if you even have this scroll, it should still work. Now, we don't have the same margin. This is something you'd want to take care of. The main view, if you want to match the margins, you could put the margin here and just stick the margin on the page here so it has the same margin, but your other page probably wants to use the margin, so you're probably just going to use a global variable of some kind and say... We can actually stick that as a resource too, the classic one, float for, I would just probably a float, ux key equals card margin, value equals 20. Yeah, we could do a resource card margin. First, that should work. Should it work or give me a complaint? That should be fine. Float is not... Okay, I got that wrong. Oh. Where'd my card margin go? That's weird. That might be one I have to reset for. Just give me a chance. When you start playing with the global structure of an app, sometimes it can't. It's usually when you add a new object we might have issues, and I think the guys are looking at that one. I tend to push our product a little bit, these damples here, doing new stuff, but why is card margin not working? We got the complicated part working with the resource here, but not the resource card margin. UX keys card margin float value 20. That's weird. Okay, so I was giving you an idea here. I don't know why that didn't work to do. And I do go back and fix these things. I fixed several from the last ones to 20, and we'll just put it in the same in the card page. This one also has a margin of 20. And we don't actually want this to go to the top of the page. In his example, where does it go? It goes kind of in the middle, kind of middly, toppy type area. This could be like another dock panel here. So this is going to make this page a dock panel, and we'll explain why in a second. We're going to put the menu at the bottom to take up space, and then the card can go right in the middle of the top. And it has no dock, and that should be enough, though. And we'll say alignment equals vertical center then. So now when we go and click on it, we gotta restart this. We screwed up something here. Oh yeah, we better hide the main view there too. Ooh, that's important. While inactive, change listing hit test mode equals none. Otherwise, you can still click on it, and that's probably not what we want. Vitor, that's what I thought too. It might be a float 4. That would be the case if you're creating a global, though. But the idea is that if you have a resource binding, this should go through the marshalling system, and the marshalling system is supposed to be able to converts floats into float 4 just by expanding the value. It's the exact same reason why we can write just 20 here, is because it's the same logic. It finds a 20 and says, oh, I can convert this to a float 4 by just putting 20, 20, 20, 20. And I was hoping the same thing would work with a card margin, and it should work. It should work enough that I'm going to put the to-do here. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't with the float 4, but I'm going to leave it as a to-do saying that should have worked. Now, I have a small issue, so it does do the transition, but it's coming from the side. Now, why is it coming from the side? Okay, this is one of these tricky cases of margins and stuff and things being in the wrong location. Has to do with the alignment here. Position change. Maybe an offset change. No, not an offset change. There's a few other options here. I'm trying to think, where did it come from? Card view, card view, card view. I'm kind of disappointed that it's doing that now. It's got the position wrong. And I'm going to add another card just for the purpose of testing a scrolling thing to make sure the scrolling is actually working correctly and help me understand why maybe the card's in the wrong place. New card. So now when we scroll, should this still come from the bottom? Yeah, I know what the issue is now. And this is the one, do we have the documentation for it? Offset change. It's not the position change. It has to be like a world position change. Is that the one it likes? There we go. World position change looks better. Yeah, world position change is the one I want. This is when you're going cross containers in the layout. World position change has a lot of limitations. You can't rely on it for some things, but when they're momentary animations, it does work. Position change means if it's changing within, when the two nodes are related, they have the same position, and world position change takes the global position, the world position. And so that gives us that. That gives us the exact transition effect that we want, and it doesn't matter where it's going to. We didn't specify any hard-coded changes here. And this is actually a navigation transition now, which is very interesting, right? You have an actual navigation transition. It's based on the layout here. You could, in theory, do this with a transition as well, but you have to be very careful about the ordering, that the transition itself could come from there. But we'll do it this way instead. This is one option, and it's a valid option, and it works. It's very flexible, this option. What we also can do, since we do have 3D, alright, so I'm hoping we have the basic transition done. It may not look exactly like his thing yet, but we have the critical part of it done. We don't have a back transition. I'm not so concerned about that yet. We could do a transition layout again. There's supposed to be a transition layout too. And we'll figure that one out. Let's ignore the back for now. I want to do a... Now, viewports are very particular. They don't like certain things. Trying to do a transition within a viewport is probably not wise. This could probably be a disaster, okay? Just so I'm telling you that in advance. But it's not. Move name, so activated. While active, we're going to change. I'm going to put rotation on here. Rotation degrees x 0, ux name equals rot x. X dot degrees x. I got the name wrong. How much does he translate it? Can anybody judge? This is a, well, maybe, it depends on the angle. It's going to say 15-degree change. Duration equals 0.5. But we're going to put a delay because it's important it starts moving before it does that translation. Otherwise it won't otherwise it'll start transitioning from the wrong place. Alright, so it's going to have to be minus. And maybe not so much. We can start transitioning it right away after 0.1 maybe. But you notice it's, it's because the translation origin's in the middle, which kind of makes an issue here. In his example, the translation's at the bottom. Now, for whatever reason, we never made an easy way to change the transition origin. There is a transform origin. And logically, you would just say have something like bottom here, but we didn't do this. So the other option you have is anchor. But then you have the issue that you have to specify the anchor. And this is going to be 50%, 100%, but that messes with the layout, that messes with the translation, that messes with everything, but let's try it anyways. You know how it shifted up, which in this case is okay, because we actually want the bottom at the top of the center. But I think that gives us, if you do this, yeah, I think that's getting the effect he wants there. I mean, coming from the top, it doesn't look as nice. And now this is what I'm talking about, faking the transition. We don't actually have the same elements here. On this nether navigation page, we've just created another element that looks exactly the same. That's part of the purpose of the card view. It's exactly the same data, so it looks exactly the same. The user doesn't need to know that it's actually something else. And I don't even use a question mark here, because logically, I don't know which one it should be. Which maybe it should just be, I don't know. We just click on the whole element. So that gives the basic transition. And let's just add the menu at the bottom for completeness for now. We can complete this another day. I just want to complete the transition effect first. And then we can complete the rest of this another day. And we'll put on the bottom, since this is a dock panel, we have another stack panel here. Stack panel dock equals bottom. And we're going to create a button class. And create a rectangle for the button. Corner radius equals 5. UX class equals card button or something. We can do this later. You can modify it. String UX property equals label. Text alignment equals center. Value equals property this.label. Font size equals pretty small. That was about the same as the card holder size, which I think was 18. Color is white again. And the color of this box is, let's use our color picker. Why not? The stack panel itself also has a color, so let's pick the color there as well. It has a massive padding on it. It has a different vertical padding than side padding. I don't know if that's intentional. That's a little bit weird. They usually don't. So it has a bigger vertical padding than side padding. We'll emulate that for now, but I don't think that's the intent. Then rectangle. Oops. Yeah, we need to enclose the text, then a slash rectangle. We don't need a border on them. And I disagree with having to cancel a different color, so we'll just leave them all the same color. Also, in simplicity, it's simpler. Quite often, simpler does line up with the correct design, but not necessarily. Unfortunately, quite often, the design is complicated to do. But we have this card button equals remove label equals remove card. And you would have a clicked handler on this, so go to the back end, and we can add those another day. So I say, we're going to actually stick these on another time. Cancel. And what I want, we'll just do this for completeness, we'll just say to lower. Oh, not to lower, to upper. Because that's what he has in the picture. And we can do the same with all of the items on the other parts of it. I think I saved it. So now you have this in the bottom, and it's they're all packed together too much, and that font size is probably too big. Item spacing equals 10. Oh, come on. Can't type there. This actually looks like it had more spacing. 15, 25. The rectangles themselves have padding. Left and right doesn't matter, but top and bottom has some probably lots of padding, about the same size as the font actually. 16. And the stack panel has a margin as well, margin of not a very big margin, but again it has a different vertical margin which appears a little bit weird. And it has a heavier corner radius than what we did. Oh, that's on the wrong place. Oh, I know why I can't do it. Well, because the stack panel has a color directly, so we're going to add rectangle corner radius equals 10. We'll put this in the background, because the rectangle itself can't have a corner back color, is just the basic background. Layer equals background. We'll take the color from up here. There we go. Now it's all nice and rounded. Rounded. I don't know what I was complaining about. He was just whining about something. But now you see the card's way too high up because we set this transform origin here. And this is a bit weird then. You have the transform origin and you don't want it at the top of the page, but we just set vertical center here. But this is the one case where you can now say, well, you know, we don't really need the vertical center. You can also do relative layout this way, because 0 y equals, where is it going to be? 75%. That's just where the bottom is going to be the card, and the transform origin will be there as well. And, oh, I don't know what happened there. Oh, yeah, okay. The moment you use X and stuff, make sure you actually give it a width. Okay, and I put the anchor in the wrong place. The anchor is supposed to be at 50%. There we go. Alright, and we can actually make this cancel do something now. Clicked equals. Let's make it go back. And then the state, we can actually make a go back function. We're in the context of the state still, the root state, so we can call go back from anywhere. And now you should actually be safe about how this goes back. If this dot pages dot length is greater than 1, this dot pages dot, oh, this horrible JavaScript syntax lies. Actually, can you just do pop? Is that a JavaScript function? Let's hope it is. And you can cancel and go back. Okay, we don't have the transition back, but that's okay. So now we have the transition effect, and I think that works nicely. I think this is the basic transition effect we had on that page. A note of warning, the perspective will not work in native mode. You require graphics mode for this, which is the default right now, but we might eventually change that because Android and iOS do not support 3D transitions. You'd have, but you can put a graphics view in there if it's really important, but doing the transition between pages then, yeah, it could be difficult. But we're in graphics mode, and that looks fine. So, we have all the basics here. And I think I'm going to finish off with that today. I think we're okay with this. We'll worry about, I don't have a back transition, but we're looking similar to his. We actually have the 3D effects. I don't have the same button. You probably want to close the button there, put the button on a different page. That's why I have different options here. And his blurred away. Now we could actually put blurring. Let's try it. I'm hesitant to do blurring. Animated blurring may be costly. Remember, Android devices don't have a lot in computing power. There's a lot of low-end devices, but let's try it anyways to give an idea of what that might look like. Because, hey, you might just want to have, as best as possible, the representation that a designer did. So name equals blur. And the radius. We're actually going to stick this within the while inactive. Oh, that gets really difficult. I don't know if we optimize this away. Change blur.radius to, I don't know, what is it, 20? Duration equals 0.5. I'm very curious as to what this actually does. That's the only reason I'm doing it, because I'm curious now. Hey, it works! Wonderful. Woo! So we have it closer, as we don't have the back transition yet, but we have the blurring away. It's not quite the same effect. Well, of course it's also gray, so it blurs. And we don't have the right easings and everything. That's probably the issue. And that little thing at the bottom, Doesn't come up until after the blurring is done. And it's also coming in with a 3D effect. I'm going to skip that bit for now. But what we can do is to keep the blurring there is we can actually change the card page. And you can have an animation on this one as well. Activating animation. Or deactivating animation, actually. When it's deactivating animation. We're going to move this off. Move y equals 1.1 relative to size. Duration equals, what is the duration of the other effect? 0.5, so 0.5, 0.6 is the total effect. So what happens? There we go, that looks better now. Except this bottom one was a rotation, and I'm going to ignore that because that would be another viewport. You can do the viewport, but I don't want to overdo it. And that looks good. We'll worry about backwards transition another time. Alright, I think I'm getting happy with this effect. We got it working. We showed how to do, by using this global resource, this resource object, we're able to, when the person clicks, set an object. This is a relative object, and this passes down to the tree as a resource. And then in the card page, we're using this in the resource from, in a transition layout, which fixed the layout, and we're waiting for the activated event. And then we can go back and we blur it. The blurring, yeah, you know, I hope blur radius 0 is optimized. I don't know. I'll have to check. I don't recommend blurring on devices like active blurring like this. This is a full screen, full graphic effect, which probably won't work on some devices, to be honest. It's just too much to draw. But again, maybe it works. I don't know. If your purpose is just to recreate it. And so we have that, and I think this looks good. I'm happy with this. The card isn't exactly as his, but we'd have to do the background of that. The question I'm not so sure about at all either, because in this view it would have to go away, but there's ways we can deal with that as well. But I'm going to leave it at this point for today, and then maybe if I do it again on Wednesday, we can come back and we can actually add the remove and edit to show some of the structuring behind it. Maybe do the transition effect, or I might have to figure out offline how to do the backwards transition effect. And backwards is notorious sometimes because of the way we're doing it through JavaScript. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is helpful. I'll push this up to GitHub and then publish the link along with the description of the card in the video, I mean, and it should be there. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and be sure to follow me on Twitch and Twitter and learn about more of these videos. And don't be afraid to ask if something's unclear or if you want a different type of thing covered in the videos. I can gladly do it. I thank you for watching, and we'll see you probably on Wednesday. Goodbye.